Hare Krishna, devotees, welcome to day 2 of our Bhakti Vaibhava seminar on Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto. And we are in the first chapter of the 4th Canto. We are in the first chapter and we are in the 6th section, which is titled The Children of Atri Muni. And we're going to continue on. We got up to verse 20. First of all, let us recite our prayers. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachadi Jatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakapaturubhyascha kripa sindubhya eva cha, patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Yes, so here we go, devotees. And we're starting with verse 20. This is Maitreya describing Atri Muni. Atri Muni is thinking. He was thinking, may the Lord of the universe, of whom I have taken shelter, kindly be pleased to offer me a son exactly like him. Let's have a look at the purport here. Prabhupada makes the point that it appears that Atri Muni he had no specific idea of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Obviously, he must have known there is a Supreme Personality of Godhead, but didn't know his name or much about him. He just wanted to beg for a child exactly like him or exactly on his level. So this kind of devotional service, Prabhupada makes the point, and it's an interesting point. This type of devotional service is described in Bhagavad Gita, where the Lord talks of 4 types of pious people who come to him asking for what they need. They don't really know much about him as a person, but they know what they need, or they feel they need certain things. So people who are materially distressed, desirous of wealth, people who are inquisitive, searching for knowledge of the absolute truth, those, I'm sure you remember, those types of people mentioned in, the 7th chapter. So in other words, Atri is not a pure devotee. Really, he had a desire, he wanted a son, but a nice type of son. Like we said, he doesn't really know who or what is the Lord, but he knows he must be really nice. So it's like a material desire, you could say. He didn't want actually the Lord, but a child like the Lord. So if he had wanted the Lord, Prabhupada says, then it would not really have been material, probably. It would have been more like a pure desire. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, but because he wanted a similar child, his desire was material. this Atri Muni cannot be counted among the pure devotees. 21. While Atri Muni was engaged in these severe austerities, a blazing fire came out of his head by virtue of his breathing exercise, and that fire was seen by the three principal deities of the three worlds. Means Lord Vishnu, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva. Prabhupada begins the purport by saying, according to Srila Jiva Goswami, the fire of pranayam is mental satisfaction. That fire was perceived by the Supersoul Vishnu, and therefore Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva also perceived it. So, by his breathing exercise, he was concentrated on the Supersoul, Lord of the universe. That's Vasudeva. And in general, by the direction of Vasudeva, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva work. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, therefore on the direction of Vasudeva, both Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva perceived the severe penance adopted by Atri Muni, and thus they were pleased to come down, as stated in the next verse. And here's the next verse, it's verse 22. At that time, the three deities approached the hermitage of Atri Muni, accompanied by the denizens of the heavenly planets, such as the celestial beauties, the Gandharvas, the Siddhas, the Vidyadharas, and the Nagas. Thus they entered the ashram of the great sage, who had become famous by his austerities. So there's a short purport here. It's 2 sentences. Let me just read it. It is advised in the Vedic literatures that one should take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who's the Lord of the universe and the Master of the creation, maintenance, and dissolution. He's known as the Supersoul, and when one worships the Supersoul, all other deities such as Brahma and Shiva appear with Lord Vishnu because they are directed by the Supersoul. So on we go to verse 23, which has no purport. So then we'll go straight on to verse 24 after that. 23, the sage was standing on one leg, but as soon as he saw that the three deities had appeared before him, he was so pleased to see them all together that despite great difficulty, he approached them on one leg, because he was doing austerities standing on one leg. It's not that he just somehow or other had only one leg. Right, so verse 24. Thereafter he began to offer prayers to the three deities who were seated on different carriers, a bull, a swan, and Garuda, and who held in their hands a drum, kusha grass, and a discus. The sage offered them his respects by falling down like a stick. Dandavat, Prabhupada refers to at the beginning of the purport. He fell down, Dandavat, Atri Muni, Dandavat. Danda means a long rod, vat means like a long stick. And before a superior, you got to fall to the ground like that. Yeah, that's called Dandavat. So in this way he showed his respect to those three deities. They're identified by their carriers and symbols, of course, that we should know pretty well by now. Lord Vishnu's on Garuda, big bird, and he carries the disc. Lord Brahma sits on a swan, and he has in his hand kusha grass, and Lord Shiva was sitting on Nandi, the bull, and carrying a drum in his hand called a damaru. So Prabhupada concludes the purport that Atri Rishi recognized them by their symbolic representations and different carriers, and thus he offered them prayers and respects. Verse 25, Atri Muni was greatly pleased to see that the three devas were gracious towards him. His eyes were dazzled by the effulgence of their bodies, and therefore he closed his eyes for the time being. So there's another just really short purport here. Let me just read it. Since the deities were smiling, he could understand they were pleased with him. Their glaring bodily effulgence was intolerable to his eyes, so he closed them for the time being. Right, and on to verses 26 and 27, which are together as sort of like you could say one unit together. But since his heart was already attracted by the deities, somehow or other he gathered his senses and with folded hands and sweet words, he began to offer prayers to the predominating deities of the universe. The great sage Atri said, O Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu, and Lord Shiva, you have divided yourself into three bodies by accepting the three modes of material nature, as you do in every millennium for the creation, maintenance, and dissolution of the cosmic manifestation. I offer my respectful obeisances unto all of you, and beg to inquire whom of you three I have called by my prayer. Krishna. Okay. So he called for the Lord, Jagadishvara, the Lord of the universe. And Prabhupada makes important philosophical point that if the Lord, if Krishna is the Lord of the universe, he must have existed before the universe, otherwise how could he be its Lord? Not that someone else creates it and someone else is in charge of it, and then he comes along, Lord Vishnu comes along and just takes over and just sort of adopts the title of the Lord of the universe. No, he must have been there before. And Prabhupada makes the point, important point, if someone builds a building, that indicates that he existed before it was built. Yeah. So therefore the Lord, the creator of the universe, must be transcendental to the universe and to the modes. Anyway, Prabhupada mentions, and of course we all know very well, Vishnu's in charge of goodness, Brahma passion, Shiva ignorance. So therefore Atri said that Jagadishvara, the Lord of the universe, must be one of you, but since three of you have appeared, I cannot recognize whom I've called. You're all so kind. Please let me know who is actually Jagadishvara, the Lord of the universe. So he didn't really know what is the position of Lord Vishnu, but he was sure the Lord can't be one of the creatures created by Maya, because the Lord is the creator of Maya. So he just prayed to all three, please let me know who's the Lord of the universe. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, he was certain, of course, that not all of them could be the Lord, but the Lord of the universe was one of the three. All right, on to verse 28. I called for the Supreme Personality of Godhead desiring a son like him, and I thought of him only. But although he's far beyond the mental speculation of man, all three of you have come here. Kindly let me know how you have come, for I'm greatly bewildered about this. And here's another extremely short little purport. I'll just read the whole thing. Atri Muni was confidently aware that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Lord of the universe, so he prayed for the one Supreme Lord. He was surprised, therefore, that three of them appeared. 29. The great sage Maitreya continued. Upon hearing Atri Muni speak in that way, the three great deities smiled, and they replied in the following sweet words. Verse 30. The three deities told Atri Muni, Dear Brahman, you're perfect in your determination, and therefore as you have decided, so it will happen. It will not happen otherwise. We are all the same person upon whom you were meditating, and therefore we have all come to you. Okay, so there is a bit more of it's a more substantial purport here. So the thing is, Atri Muni thought non-specifically about the Lord of the universe. No clear idea. Of course, it can be accepted that Mahavishnu is the Lord of the universe. That's no problem. But he didn't know that. It's also possible to consider Garbhadakshay Vishnu or Kshiradakshay Vishnu to be the Lord of the universe. And then under Kshiradakshay Vishnu, Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva can be accepted as lords of the universe. The second paragraph here of the purport. So Vishnu is the maintainer. So therefore, it's most appropriate to consider him. He's the Lord of the universe. Brahma creates planetary systems and population, so he can be Lord of the universe. Shiva is the destroyer. He can also be considered the Lord of the universe. Therefore, because Atri Muni didn't specify, they all came. And they all said, since you are thinking of having a son exactly like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord of the universe, your determination will be fulfilled. So, in other words, one's determination will be fulfilled according to the strength of one's devotion. This is really the point. We should definitely note that. And Prabhupada refers to Bhagavad Gita 9:25, that people go where the people want to go in terms of next lives, particularly. And Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, now according to the strength of his determination for a son, his desire would be fulfilled by the grace of the Lord. 31. And actually 31, 32, 33, none of them have purports. So let's just read through. You will have sons who will represent a partial manifestation of our potency. And because we desire all good fortune for you, those sons will glorify your reputation throughout the world. 32. Thus, while the couple looked on, the three deities, Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshvara, disappeared from that place after bestowing upon Atri Muni the benediction. Verse 33. Thereafter, from the partial representation of Brahma, the moon god was born of them. From the partial representation of Vishnu, the great mystic Dattatreya was born. And from the partial representation of Shankara, Lord Shiva, Devasa was born. Now you may hear from me of the many sons of Angira. So that was Atri Muni. Of course, there's more to it than that. I mean, in terms of Atri Muni's sons, but that's like very focused. So on we go now. The seventh section is just verses 34 and 35, and neither have purports. So let's just read through them. Angira's wife Shraddha gave birth to 4 daughters, named Sinivali, Kuhu, Raka, and Anumati. 35. Besides these 4 daughters, she also had another 2 sons. One of them was known as Uttatya, and the other was the learned scholar Brihaspati. That's interesting, isn't it? Brihaspati is the son of Angira and Shraddha. So on we go to section 8, verse 36 to verse 42. So we'll read through these verses first of all. And, well, let me just have a look at them. You know what? There's hardly any purport at all. So I'm just going to actually read straight through. So this is now section 8, verse 36 to verse 42, which we've titled The Children of the Last of Kardama's Daughters. 36 to 42. Pulastya begot in his wife Havirbu, one son of the name Agastya, who in his next birth became Daragni. Besides him, Pulastya begot another very great and saintly son, whose name was Vishrava. 37. Vishrava had 2 wives. The first wife was Idavida, from whom Kuvera, the master of the Yakshas, was born. And the next wife was named Keshini, from whom 3 sons were born, Ravana, Kumbhakarna, and Vibhishana, Krishna. Yeah, of course, because Ravana is the son of Vishrava. Verse 38, Gati, the wife of the sage Pulaha, gave birth to 3 sons named Karmashreshta, Variyan, and Sahishnu, and all of them were great sages. And there is tiny little 1 sentence or 2 sentence purport here. I'll just read it. Verse 38. Gati, the wife of Pulaha, was the 5th daughter of Kardama Muni. She was very faithful to her husband, and all her sons were as good as he. 39. Kratu's wife, Kriya, gave birth to 60,000 great sages, named the Valakilyas. All these sages were greatly advanced in spiritual knowledge, and their bodies were illuminated by such knowledge. So again, there's an extremely short purport. I'll just read it. Kriya was the 6th daughter of Kardama Muni, and she produced 60,000 sages who were known as the Valakilyas, because they all retired from family life as Vanaprasthas. That's why they're called Valakilyas. Okay. Verse 40, the great sage Vasishta begotten his wife Urja, sometimes called Arundhati, 7 spotlessly great sages, headed by the sage named Chitraketu. The names of these 7 sages were as follows: Chitraketu, Surochi, Viraja, Mitra, Ulbana, Vasubridhyana, and Duman. Some other very competent sons were born from Vasishta's other wife. So again, what a one-sentence purport. Urja, who's sometimes known as Arundhati and was the wife of Vasishta, was the 9th daughter of Kardama Muni. 42. Chitti, wife of the sage Atharva, gave birth to a son named Ashvashira by accepting a great vow called Dadyancha. Now you may hear from me about the descendants of the sage Bhrigu. And again, there's a very, very short purport. The wife of Atharva, known as Chitti, is also known as Shanti. She was the 8th daughter of Kardama Muni. So now, 9th section, from verse 43 to verse 52, and you know it's the same situation, or even more so. There's not a single purport here, because it just lists, basically, just lists of names, the descendants of Manu. So, okay, this is the 9th section, verse 43 to verse 52, and it's called Descendants of Other Children of Manu. 43. The sage Bhrigu was highly fortunate. In his wife, known as Kyati, he begot 2 sons, named Datta and Vidata, and 1 daughter named Shri, who was very much devoted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. 44. The sage Meru had 2 daughters named Ayati and Niyati, whom he gave in charity to Datta and Vidata. Ayati and Niyati gave birth to 2 sons, Mrikanda and Prana. 45. From Mrikanda, Markandeya Muni was born, and from Prana the sage, Vedashira, whose son was Ushana Shukracharya, also known as Kavi. Thus Kavi also belonged to the descendants of the Bhrigu dynasty. Verses 46 to 47, right? My dear Vidura, the population of the universe was thus increased by the descendants of these sages and the daughters of Kardama. Anyone who hears the descriptions of this dynasty with faith will be relieved from all sinful reactions. Hope you got that. Another of Manu's daughters, known as Prasuti, married the son of Brahma named Daksha. 48. Daksha begot 16 very beautiful daughters with lotus-like eyes in his wife Prasuti. Of these 16 daughters, 13 were given in marriage to Dharma, and one daughter was given to Agni. And one daughter was given to Agni. So now we have verses 49 to 52, and they're just together. And they're just a big list, basically. One of the remaining 2 daughters was given in charity to the Pitri Loka, where she resides very amicably, and the other was given to Lord Shiva, who is the deliverer of sinful persons from material entanglement. The names of the 13 daughters of Daksha who were given to Dharma are Shraddha, Maitri, Daya, Shanti, Tushti, Pushti, Kriya, Unnati, Buddhi, Meta, Titiksha, Hri, and Murti. These 13 daughters produced the following sons. Shraddha gave birth to Shubha, Maitri produced Prasada, Daya gave birth to Abhaya, Shanti gave birth to Sukha, Tushti gave birth to Muddha, not Mudha, but Muddha. Pushti gave birth to Smaya, Kriya gave birth to Yoga, Unnati gave birth to Darpa, Buddhi gave birth to Artha, Medha gave birth to Smriti, Titiksha gave birth to Kshema, and Hri gave birth to Prashraya. Murti, a reservoir of all respectable qualities, gave birth to Sri Naranarayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Wow, that's interesting, isn't it? Look at that. Okay. Next is section 10, the appearance of Naranarayan, from verse 53 to verse 59. Let's have a look. Do we have purports here? We actually do, to some degree. So let's just read through, first of all. 53. On the occasion of the appearance of Naranarayan, the entire world was full of joy. Everyone's mind became tranquil, and thus in all directions, the air, the rivers, and the mountains became pleasant. 54 to 55, just a sec. In the heavenly planets, bands began to play, and they showered flowers from the sky. The pacified sages chanted Vedic prayers. The denizens of heaven, known as the Gandharvas and Kinnaras, sang. The beautiful damsels of the heavenly planets danced, and in this way, at the time of the appearance of Naranarayan, all signs of good fortune were visible. Just at that time, great demigods like Brahma also offered their respectful prayers. 56. The demigod said, "Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto the transcendental personality of Godhead, who created as his external energy this cosmic manifestation, which is situated in him as the air and clouds are situated in space, and who has now appeared in the form of Naranarayan Rishi in the house of Dharma." 57. Let that Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is understood by truly authorized Vedic literature, and who has created peace and prosperity to destroy all calamities of the created world, be kind enough to bestow his glance upon the demigods. His merciful glance can supersede the beauty of the spotless lotus flower, which is the home of the goddess of fortune. 58. Maitreya said, "O Vidura, thus the demigods worshipped with prayers the Supreme Personality of Godhead appearing as the sage Naranarayan. The Lord glanced upon them with mercy and then departed for Gandhamadana hill." 59. That Naranarayan Rishi, who's a partial expansion of Krishna, has now appeared in the dynasties of Yadu and Kuru, in the forms of Krishna and Arjuna, respectively, to mitigate the burden of the world. Okay, so let's go through here in more detail. 53, well, a couple of verses without purports, then we'll get a purport. 53. On the occasion of the appearance of Narayan, the entire world was full of joy. Everyone's mind became tranquil, and thus in all directions the air, the rivers, and the mountains became pleasant. 54 and 55. In the heavenly planets, bands began to play, and they showered flowers from the sky. The purified sages chanted Vedic prayers. The denizens of heaven, known as the Gandharvas and Kinnaras, sang. The beautiful damsels of the heavenly planets danced. And in this way, at the time of the appearance of Narayan, all signs of good fortune were visible. Just at that time, great demigods like Brahma also offered their respectful prayers. The demigods said, "Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto the transcendent personality of Godhead, who created as his external energy this cosmic manifestation, which is situated in him as the air and clouds are situated in space, and who has now appeared in the form of Narayan Rishi in the house of Dharma." So devotees, we have a purport. So Prabhupada begins by saying that the universal form is the cosmic manifestation, which is an exhibition of the external energy of the Lord. And in the cosmos, in space, it's full of varieties, planets, clouds, airplanes, and it's that variety is a manifestation of the external energy of the Lord. And it's all situated within him. So after that, he appeared, Supreme Personality of Godhead. After that, he appeared in his energy, which is one and different from him, one with him and different from him. So therefore the demigods offered their respects to him, who manifests in so many varieties. Of course, the impersonalists, what can you say? The impersonalists, they think the varieties are false. So in the verse, one thing that was said was, Yo maya virachitam, Yo maya virachitam, which indicates the varieties are manifestations of the energy of the Lord. Thus, because the energy is non-different from the Godhead, the varieties are also factual. So material varieties may be temporary, but they're not false. They're reflections they're a reflection of the spiritual varieties. Then there's another word, pratichakshanaya, which means there are varieties. And this announces the glory of the Lord, who appeared as Narayan Rishi, and is the origin of all varieties of material nature. Verse 57. Let that Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is understood by truly authorized Vedic literature, and who has created peace and prosperity to destroy all calamities of the created world, be kind enough, so let the Lord be kind enough to bestow his glance upon the demigods. His merciful glance can supersede the beauty of the spotless lotus flower, which is the home of the goddess of fortune. Okay, that's nice. So let's have a look at the purport here. So the Lord, whose origin of cosmic manifestation, he is, so to speak, covered by material nature, the activities of material nature. Just like outer space or the light of the sun and moon are sometimes covered by the clouds. It means, what does this covered mean? Covered from us. Yeah, not like covered, like complete, like obscured in all respects, but just from our very, limited vision. The clouds may cover the sun. So of course it's difficult. Prabhupada makes the point, it's very difficult to find the origin of the cosmic manifestation. So the scientists think nature is the ultimate cause. But from Shastra we understand that behind nature is the Lord. Prabhupada asked the question, sort of hypothetical or rhetorical, that whose nature is it? Whose nature is it? Yeah. Nature, they think nature's the ultimate cause, but whose nature is it? It's the Lord's nature. So therefore Prabhupada goes on to say that we understand that behind that nature is the Lord, it's his nature. And he appears to maintain the regular procedures of the cosmic manifestation, just to make sure it works in normal ways. Yeah, the sort of regular procedures, and to be visible to people in goodness. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, he's the cause of the creation and dissolution of the cosmic manifestation. The demigods therefore prayed for his merciful glance upon them in order to be blessed. Looks like we may finish the whole chapter. Verse 58, Maitreya said, O Vidura, thus the demigods worshipped with prayers, the Supreme Personality of Godhead appearing as the sage Narayan. The Lord glanced upon them with mercy and then departed for Gandhamadana hill. And verse 59, that Narayan Rishi, who's a partial expansion of Krishna, has now appeared in the dynasties of Yadu and Kuru in the forms of Krishna and Arjuna respectively, to mitigate the burden of the world. So there's a shortish purport here. Prabhupada makes the point, it's very important, Narayan. Narayan is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Nara is part of him. So they're the energy and the energetic together as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Maitreya told Vidura that Nara had appeared in the Kuru family. That's there in the verse. And Narayan had come as Krishna to deliver suffering humanity from material burdens. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, in other words, Narayan Rishi is now present in the world in the forms of Krishna and Arjuna. So on we go, devotees, to the last bit, the last section, number 11. Further descendants, concluding with Sati. And this is from verse 60 to verse 66. It's 66, right? And that's the end of the chapter. So we may be able to begin the second chapter today. Now, in terms of purports, I'm just going to read straight through because there's a couple of small purports, but there's really nothing substantial. 60. The predominating deity of fire begotten his wife Swaha 3 children, named Pavaka, Pavamana, and Shuchi, who exist by eating the oblations offered to the fire of sacrifice. Okay, short purport. I'll just read the whole thing. After describing the descendants of the 13 wives of Dharma, who were all daughters of Daksha, Maitreya now describes the 14th daughter of Daksha, Swaha, and her 3 sons. Oblations offered in the sacrificial fire are meant for the demigods, and on behalf of the demigods, the 3 sons of Agni and Swaha, namely Pavaka, Pavamana, and Shuchi, accept the oblations. Okay, verse 61. From those 3 sons, another 45 descendants were generated, who were also fire gods. The total number of fire gods is therefore 49, including the fathers and the grandfather. And again, this short purport. The grandfather is Agni, and the sons are Pavaka, Pavamana, and Shuchi. Counting these 4 plus 45 grandsons, there are altogether 49 different fire gods. Okay. Verse 62. These 49 fire gods are the beneficiaries of the oblations offered in the Vedic sacrificial fire by impersonalist Brahmins. And again, very short purport. Let's see what Prabhupada says about this. Impersonalists who perform Vedic fruitive sacrifices are attracted to the various fire gods and offer oblations in their name. The 49 fire gods are described herewith. Verse 63, the Agnisvatas, the Barhishadas, the Somyas, and the Ajapas are the Pitas. They're either Sagnika or Niragnika, with fire or without. The wife of all these Pitas is Swadha, who is the daughter of King Daksha. 64. Swadha, who was offered to the Pitas, begot 2 daughters named Vayuna and Dharini, both of whom were impersonalists. Wow. And were expert in transcendental and Vedic knowledge, but they're impersonalists. That's extraordinary, isn't it? 65. The 16th daughter, whose name was Sati, was the wife of Lord Shiva. She could not produce a child, although she was always faithfully engaged in the service of her husband. Okay, so she couldn't produce a child, although she was faithfully serving her husband. So how could that work? Verse 66 explains. The reason is that Sati's father, Daksha, used to rebuke Lord Shiva in spite of Shiva's faultlessness. Consequently, before attaining a mature age, Sati gave up her body by dint of yogic mystic power. So she died, you could say, she left her body before she was physically mature enough to give birth to children. That is what happened. Not that she was somehow, incapable of producing children. So, right, there's a short purport here. Let's just have a look at the purport. Right. So we just read how Daksha used to rebuke Lord Shiva, and Sati got very upset, so she gave up her body. So Prabhupada says Shiva, as the head of all the mystical yogis, he never bothered making a house to live in. And Sati was the youngest daughter of Daksha, and she selected Lord Shiva as a husband, which Daksha was not happy with. Therefore, when they would meet, he would criticize her husband. That, oh, look, he doesn't even provide a house for you. And because of all of this, as we're going to read it, it's what a story. It's really quite a story, my gosh. So because of this, she gave up her body, and therefore she couldn't produce a child, obviously, because she was already dead. So there you go, devotees. We have concluded the first chapter of the fourth canto, and that's fine, that's good. What we will do, let us just make a start on the second chapter. We have several minutes left. Let's just make a start on Canto 4, Chapter 2, which is titled Daksha Curses Lord Shiva. Right, so there are 35 verses here, which we have divided into 7 sections as follows. So section 1 is verse 1, 2 and 3, verses 1 to 3, which we've titled, Vidura asks Maitreya why Daksha was envious of Sati. That's an extremely important question. Vidura asks Maitreya why Daksha was envious of Sati. Verse 1 to verse 3. Second section, verse 4 to verse 7. Daksha enters the sacrificial arena. Verse 4 to verse 7, Daksha enters the sacrificial arena. Third section, from verse 8 to verse 19, Daksha curses Lord Shiva. Verse 8 to verse 19, Daksha curses Lord Shiva. That's a mistake. Gee, what a mistake. It's amazing. Fourth section, verse 20 to verse 26, Nandishvara curses the followers of Daksha. Nandishvara is pretty much like the main associate of Lord Shiva, main servant of Lord Shiva. So it's verse 20 to verse 26. Nandishvara curses the followers of Daksha. And then section 5, verse 27 to verse 32, Brigu curses the followers of Lord Shiva. 27 to 32, Brigu curses the followers of Lord Shiva. Sixth section, which is just verse 33 alone, Lord Shiva leaves the sacrificial arena. Verse 33. Lord Shiva leaves the sacrificial arena. Then seventh and last section, verses 34 and 35, the sacrifice is concluded. Verse 34 to verse 35, the sacrifice is concluded. Right, so that's the structure of the second chapter. Let's have a look at it. Okay, so first section is verse 1 to verse 3. Vidura asks Maitreya why Daksha was envious of Sati. And it's only 3 verses, let me just see the purport side of things. Yeah, I think we'll read the verses and then go back through. Verse 1. Vidura inquired, why was Daksha, who was so affectionate towards his daughter, envious of Lord Shiva, who's the best among the gentle? Why did he neglect his daughter, Sati? Verse 2. Lord Shiva, the spiritual master of the entire world, is free from enmity, is a peaceful personality, and is always satisfied in himself. He is the greatest among the demigods. How is it possible that Daksha could be inimical towards such an auspicious personality? Verse 3. My dear Maitreya, to part with one's life is very difficult. Would you kindly explain to me how such a son-in-law and father-in-law could quarrel so bitterly that the great goddess Sati could give up her life? Sure. I mean, that is a question, isn't it? Okay, so devotees, we'll stop here and we'll start tomorrow morning going through this first section in detail. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.